Hi angels, welcome back to my channel. This is going to be a true crime video. Before I start, I just want to say thank you so much for all the support lately. Like, I've had so many people be messaging us saying they've been watching my videos, and yeah, it means so much. So yeah, this case is pretty controversial case, and I'm really interested to hear what you guys have got to say about it, really. This is the story of a female serial killer, which I think is like just very strange, because not to be sexist, but you know, the majority of serial killers we know of are men. Maybe women just get away with it more, I don't know. But do you know what, I was getting ready for this video, right, and I was like, what outfit shall I wear? And then I was wearing this to get ready, and I was like, I am not changing, this is so comfortable and it looks so cute. So yeah, it's also why I don't have any jewellery on, because I couldn't be bothered, so that's good. I've got me little, all my notes here ready. Anyways, so I'm just going to get into it, because you know what my intros are like, they take 10 hours, so I'm going to get into it. This is the case of Aileen Wuornos. Hope I'm saying that right, not sure if I am. She was born in Rochester, Michigan on February 29th, 1956. Her mum was Diane Wuornos, and she was only 14 years old when she married Leo Dale Pittman, and he was 16 years old, and this was in 1954. They had their first son in March of 1955, and then Diane became pregnant with Aileen. But 2 months before Aileen was born, Diane filed for divorce from Aileen's dad, and Aileen never actually got to meet her dad ever, because when Aileen was born, he was put into jail after being convicted of the rape and attempted murder of a 7-year-old girl. He was also then diagnosed with schizophrenia. Aileen's dad was in and out of mental hospitals and prisons for multiple sex crimes against children, and it's very interesting that he was in and out of them, which meant they kept letting him out and obviously kept reoffending, and then they would just put him back in, which I think is ridiculous. In 1969, Aileen's dad committed suicide by hanging himself in prison. In January 1960, when Aileen was only 4 years old, her mum Diane took her and her brother to the grandparents' house. Diane dropped Aileen and her brother off there. However, she never returned to pick up her 2 children, and the grandparents had no idea that she was going to do this. A few months later, in March 1960, the grandparents legally adopted both children. So by the age of 11, Aileen began partaking in sexual acts in exchange for drugs, cigarettes, alcohol with the other boys at our school. Sadly, Aileen and her brother's home lives were absolutely terrible. Aileen would say that her and her brother would engage in sexual relations with each other. They weren't taught it was wrong. Aileen says that her grandfather was an alcoholic who used to beat and rape her. The grandfather would even allow his friends to come around the house, like family friends, to participate in the sexual abuse. At the age of only 14, Aileen fell pregnant with one of her grandfather's friends who was raped her. Aileen was sent away to a home for unwed mothers to have the baby, and the baby was immediately put up for adoption in March 1971. After Aileen returned home to her grandparents, her grandmother died of liver failure. It's unknown whether the grandmother knew of the abuse or she knew the extent of the abuse, but I think it's very likely that she did know of the abuse, because if it was as bad as Aileen was saying, then how could she not have known? Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like you would know. Aileen then dropped out of school at the age of 15, and the grandfather kicked her and her brother out of the house. Her brother went to like a friend's house and stayed there, but Aileen literally had no one. So she slept in a wooded area behind one of her friend's houses, and then at night she would work as a sex worker to be able to support herself, and she was only 15 years old. Between Aileen being 15 and 18, we don't really know what she was doing, because she has like multiple stories of what she was doing, and it's not really important to the case. So we'll move on to May 1974, when Aileen was 18 years old and she was arrested in Colorado. She was arrested for driving under the influence, for firing a pistol out of a moving car, and then also for disorderly conduct. On top of that, she was then charged with failure to appear at court. Then in 1976, Aileen hitchhiked from Colorado to Florida, and then in Florida she met 69-year-old Lewis. He was older than her, he had a fair bit of money, he was a yacht club president. They ended up getting married very quickly after meeting, and during them being together, Aileen would be involved in a lot of confrontations in local bars quite often. I think it's obvious she had a lot of built-up anger inside of her, and I think she would go to these bars and fight people and, you know, have these physical altercations, because I think she was so angry at everyone and everything. but these confrontations obviously led to her being arrested for assault. She also then assaulted her husband by attacking him with his own cane. This then led to him filing for a restraining order only after a few weeks of being married. Eileen then decided to move back to Michigan in July of 1976. What she would do is she would often like go to bars because obviously they're open really late, and then she'd like find someone there and like ask if she could stay at their house, because like when people are drunk they're kind of like obviously a lot more friendly, so people would often let her just like sleep on the couch at their house. She was also charged with assault for throwing a cue ball at a bartender's head. Then in July of 1976, her brother died of cancer. He actually left her $10,000 of his life insurance money. Eileen says that she used this money to pay off a fine and used the rest of it to buy a car, but she spent all the money within 2 months of having it and she wrote off the car. In May 1981, Eileen headed back to Florida. While she was there, she robbed a convenience store, or a corner shop, whatever you want to call it. And when she robbed it, she only got $35 and 2 packs of cigarettes, and she ended up getting caught and arrested. She ended up being sentenced to 1 year in prison. Eileen was always very reckless whether or not she'd get caught. She'd never try to really hide what she was doing or protect herself from being caught. And in interviews, Eileen even says this, and it could be due to the fact she was homeless, because sometimes homeless people will commit crimes and get caught on purpose, so they have somewhere to stay instead of sleeping on the streets. Like obviously jail isn't ideal, but having a bed and a bathroom and food and water, it's better than being on the streets for some people. Literally a few days after she got out of jail, she was arrested again for forged bank checks. She was like constantly in trouble with the law, like all the time, and I'll name a couple of things she got charged for. So grand theft auto, obstruction of justice, resisting arrest, firearms possession, robbery, assault. In January 1986, Eileen meets a woman called Tyra Moore in a gay bar. According to Eileen, when they met there was an instant connection, and she says Tyra just like straight away became the love of her life and they moved in together. Tyra worked as a maid in a motel and Eileen would do her sex work. There were multiple accusations of assault against Eileen, because like I said, she would always go to bars and get in fights, and Tyra would always come forward as like a witness in her defence, kind of like worked as a team. Eileen would get arrested for something, Tyra would back her up and say she didn't do it. Tyra denies this. She says that she didn't stick up for her. Anyway, this got Eileen out of trouble a lot. So like we've said, Eileen had a long history of crimes and being in trouble with the law, but she never had committed murder until 1989, when Eileen went on to murder 7 men in a 12-month period. We only know of 7 men, but that doesn't mean to say there wasn't more. They're just what we know of. There could have been a lot more men that she murdered that we don't know. It's highly likely that there was actually more. Eileen would murder men who would pick her up for sexual favours. So it was really hard to find anything about these victims. Like, it was literally impossible. So I've got a little bit about them. I haven't got as much as I would like, because I like to talk about them a bit. And obviously, if you know any more facts, put them down below. The first victim that was found was 51-year-old Richard Mallory. He was a store owner of an electric shop in Florida Clearwater. There were 2 bullets that were found in his left lung, and those were his cause of death. His body was found in a wooded area several miles away from where he actually lived. Eileen says she killed him in late November, but his body wasn't found till December the 13th. This victim was a convicted rapist multiple times. Like, he'd committed rape and been charged with it multiple times. And Eileen's claimed to have killed in self-defence. She said that she was going to do her sex work and he was a client of hers. But when they were alone together, he beat her, he tied her up, he poured alcohol in her wounds, a bunch of other horrible things I'm not even going to name. He also sexually assaulted her. She said that she ended up getting loose from her ties, and in self-defence she got a gun and shot him. She said she took his car and his money and left him in the woods. Now, like I said, he was a convicted rapist multiple times, so it is likely that she is telling the truth, but obviously we don't know. The second victim was 56-year-old Charles Humphries. He was a retired Air Force major. He was also a former child abuse investigator and a former chief of police. His body was found in September 1990. He was shot 6 times in the head and torso. The third victim was 40-year-old Charles Casacadon. I think that's how you say it. He was a part-time rodeo worker and Eileen shot him 9 times. His body was found in Florida on June the 6th and he was found wrapped in an electrical blanket. Witnesses actually came forward and said that they'd seen Eileen in this victim's car, and this was when Eileen became a person of interest to police. Inside the victim's car there was a gun in the glove compartment. Eileen found it and pawned it. So this was a really bad idea because this gun was registered in the victim's name. So police started looking into her and looking into her lengthy criminal history. Eileen and Tyra would move around Florida a lot, and Eileen would do a sex work at night to be able to provide for them, and they would kind of stay at different hotels all the time. The fourth victim was 50-year-old Troy Burress, and he worked as a salesman. He was reported missing July 31st of 1990. His body was found in August in a wooded area along State Road 19. He'd been shot twice and again she'd robbed him. The fifth victim was 65-year-old Peter Seams. He was a merchant salesman. He devoted a lot of his time to the Christian community. His body was actually never found. After Eileen killed this man, she took his car, and there were witnesses saying that they'd seen her and Tyra, Eileen and Tyra, abandon the car. When police got the car, they were able to get a palm print from the inside of the car, from the interior door handle. This was identified to be Eileen's palm print, which linked her to the killing. The sixth victim was 62-year-old Walter Gino Antino. He was a trucker and his body was found November the 19th, 1990, near a remote lodging road in Dixie County. He was actually found naked, which obviously is different to the other ones, and he'd been shot 4 times, and again she'd robbed him. The seventh victim was 43-year-old David Spears. He was a winter garden construction worker and he was shot 6 times. On June the 1st, 1990, his body was found along Route 19 in Florida. They stole his car and took his money again. And then when this victim was found, the police were kind of putting the bits of the jigsaw together, you know, they were matching all the victims and linking them. So in the last victim's car, Eileen and Tyra got into a bit of a car crash. It was only small, and it was like in a residential estate, so the people that lived there came out to check, you know, if they were okay. When Eileen and Tyra seen that people were coming outside, they got very worried and nervous that the people living there might call the police, you know, just to kind of check up on them. But obviously, if the police had have come, they would have noticed that they were in a victim's car. So they panicked, they told the people that were there that everything was fine, and they both ran away on foot, which obviously made them look so sketchy. Like, who crashes the car and then runs away on foot? Like, it looks very sketchy. So the people that lived there decided to call the police because of this, and they gave like a brief description of Eileen and Tyra. So police were able to get the names and they ran a massive media campaign trying to locate them, maybe get tips on where they are. Police found lots of items that belonged to the victims in pawn shops, and they were able to actually lift fingerprints off a couple of these items. And obviously because Eileen had been to jail, the police had her fingerprints already, and this then linked Eileen to these items. On January the 9th, 1991, Eileen went to a biker bar in Florida, which was actually called The Last Resort, which is kind of ironic. But police found her there and arrested her. She was alone, but police managed to track down Tyra in Pennsylvania. Eileen had told police that her and Tyra had got into a big argument, and Tyra decided she wanted to go home, back where her family was, which was Pennsylvania, because she was just sick of the life that they had. She was sick of living in a different hotel every night and she just wanted to go home. We know that Tyra knew about a couple of these murders, but Eileen had told her they were in self-defence. We don't know if she knew all of the murders or the extent of them, but it's kind of unlikely that she didn't know because she spent every single day with her. They lived together, they loved each other, they taught each other everything. And where did she think that Eileen was getting these new calls from all the time? Where did she think Eileen... I don't know, it doesn't make much sense to me. I feel like she probably knew more than she was letting on, but obviously we don't know. So the police needed a confession from Eileen, so they kind of used Tyra to get a confession, and eventually they did manage to get the confession. In return for this confession, Tyra received immunity, which basically means that she can't get charged of anything. Like I said before, Eileen claims that these men tried to rape her and it was in self-defence. So the media went crazy when they found this out, because a woman serial killer. Like it was so unbelievable to them. And she was the first documented female serial killer in the US. The media went in on her, like they called her a monster, and just honestly if you see the newspaper clippings, like people hated her. She went to trial a year later and she had multiple trials from January to November of 1992. She had a separate trial for each known victim. She received 6 death sentences for these murders. In court, Tyra testified against Eileen. This clearly really upset Eileen because Tyra was the only person she ever trusted. She was the only one that was there for her ever. Eileen told several inconsistent stories about these killings. She initially claimed that these 7 men all tried to rape her while she was working as a sex worker. However, she later reversed the claim of self-defence and said that they were robberies. She said she only intended to commit robbery, but she didn't want any witnesses left behind, so that's why she would kill them. Eileen was kept in the Florida State Prison while she was awaiting a death sentence. In 2001, there was a petition at the Florida court, and Eileen stated her intention to dismiss the legal counsel and terminate all pending appeals, which basically was her way of saying that she wanted to be executed now. Saying, quote, "I killed those men, I robbed them as cold as ice, and I'd do it again too. There's no chance in keeping me alive or anything because I'd kill again. I have hate crawling through my system. I'm so sick of hearing that she's crazy stuff. I've been evaluated so many times. I'm competent, sane, and I'm trying to tell the truth. I am one who seriously hates the human life and would kill again." I know I don't usually read quotes of murderers, but I just thought that was really interesting what she said. Her attorneys would always say that she wasn't mentally competent and there's no way that anyone wants to be sentenced to death. And they were basically saying, do not listen to what Eileen is saying because she doesn't know what she's doing. But Eileen insisted that she did know what she was doing. The court appointed a panel of psychiatrists and they all agreed that she was sane and that execution is what she really wanted. Her execution took place October the 2nd, 2002. There's been many books, many TV shows, many movies that, I think one of them was called The Monster. And before I say anything, I just want to reiterate, I'm not sticking up for her. I'm not making excuses for her because she's a serial killer. She killed 7 men, innocent or not, she still killed 7 men. She had a terrible upbringing and she had no one to guide her in the right direction ever. Or even like to teach her right from wrong, like she never had that. Like I'm not excusing what she did, but it's not surprising that she grew up hating men with a traumatic past of her grandfather and her grandfather's friends. I definitely think she should have been punished, but I do not agree with the death penalty in this. I think she needed help. I think it was unjustified, but it's only my opinion. You know, loads of people do agree that the death penalty was correct, but I can't help thinking that if this was a man in Eileen's situation, would he have been given the same, I don't know what the word is, like sympathy? Anyway guys, that is the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching. This was quite a sad one, I think, but very interesting. I'd love to know your opinions. Make sure you put in things you want advice for and your situations down in the Ask Amélie box. Follow us on my Instagram, like, comment and subscribe. Oh my god, ow. I've got a takeaway waiting for us downstairs, so excited for that. I've been playing with my hair the whole time because these are no extensions. But anyway, angels, thank you so much for watching. I love you all and have a great week. Bye.